Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 206 based on novel. So let's start. Just as Chen Zhan and Wu Ji blurted out in surprise, Yi Luo's hands inserted his 5 fingers into their chests, and the terrible power spread out in time. Accompanied by a hissing sound, under the extremely red and distorted expression of the two people, the position of the chest injury was quickly corroded at the speed visible to the eyes. However, after a few breaths, a large piece of flesh and blood in front of the two people's chest was forcibly corroded, revealing the dense white bones and scarlet flesh and viscera. Under the erosion of that corrosive force, it can be clearly seen that even the white bones that have been exposed to the air have changed color. As the hardest bone of the human body, it seems to melt and become thick. In an instant, the two strong 9-star fighting emperors had turned into seriously injured bodies. They stumbled backward and retreated violently. Finally, they fell to the ground with a plop. In a short moment, their physical strength seemed to be exhausted. While holding back the sharp pain from their bodies with the help of fighting spirit, they turned their extremely frightened eyes to the man who was approaching them step by step, Yi Luotian. At this moment, even if they were stupid, they should guess that the other party obviously had an attempt on them, but from beginning to end, they were kept in the dark by the people in front of them. When did you? Your cultivation is not the 8-star duty at all. They were extremely frightened and stared at Yi Luotian in front of them. Their fear could not be described in words. They could not imagine that the people they most despised in ordinary days would dominate their life and death today. Moreover, their proud strength was worthless in the eyes of the latter. Did you finally find out? But unfortunately, it's too late. I successfully broke through the 9-star fight emperor a few years ago. I just waited for this moment today, so I kept silent. I thought I could kill the 3 of you today, but I didn't expect that the waste Jianming could not even stop Xiaoyang's fist. It's useless. Yi Luotian's mocking look on his face, and the disdain in his words was not concealed at all. However, immediately behind him, a Taoist shadow came and stood behind Yi Luotian. Until then, Chen Zhan and Wu Jitian looked up and found that the cultivation of these 10 people standing behind Yi Luotian was terrible. All of them were 9-star fighting emperors, and they knew more or less about their faces. Lin Nan, you are the blood-scale hand Lin Nan? Why are you in his team? Just as Wu Jitian's eyes jumped, he suddenly found a familiar-looking man in the team behind Yi Luotian, and Lin Nan in his mouth is also a 9-star fighting emperor. Even compared with him in his peak period, the latter's strength is no less than that of him. The two used to be both enemies and friends. They talked and laughed with each other, but now, Lin Nan was standing behind Yi Luotian, like a servant, which really surprised him. For Wu Jitian's questions, Lin Nan lowered his head deeply. In the past, he had some friendship with Wu Jitian. Now the pattern between them will become like this. I'm afraid no one wants to see this scene. What's the matter? What's the matter with you all? You are all famous strong men in the western regions. How can you be willing to stand behind him now? Seeing these people bow their heads, Wu Jitian suddenly became angry and showed such a humble appearance like a slave. It was really hard for him to imagine. Oh, Lin Nan, it seems that you have an old acquaintance with Lord Wu? At this time, Yi Luotian turned his eyes to Lin Nan in the crowd behind him, with a smile. However, the smile looked startling. Lin Nan did nothing, hoping to escape Yi Luotian's questions. It doesn't matter if you don't want to say it. Now, I'll give you a task. Yi Luotian smiled ferociously. His bloodthirsty eyes stared at Lin Nan and slowly said, "Take off the heart of Wu Jitian." Yes. For a moment, Lin Nan's body shook uncontrollably, and even his breathing stopped suddenly. If the whole person's heart was struck by lightning, he could not think that Yi Luotian would be so vicious that he asked him to take off Wu Jitian's heart. Such an act is inferior to man and beast. What, you want to disobey my orders? Seeing Lin Nan's silence, Yi Luotian's eyes suddenly narrowed, the cold light flickered in the depths of his pupils, and his killing intention quickly condensed. 1, 2, 3. Until after 10. Suddenly, Lin Nan, who was trembling, suddenly screamed, and the whole person instantly fell to the ground. The shrill scream made people want to burst their eardrums. The whole body curled up uncontrollably, convulsed violently, blood flowed out of the 7 orifices, and the breath also decreased rapidly. After a short moment, he completely lost his breath and turned into a corpse. For those 9-star fighting emperors who have witnessed all this from beginning to end, they have no intention to appear for them. Perhaps they have seen similar scenes and dare not appear just in order to save their lives. All the people present had only deep fear of Yi Luotian. No one knows how terrible this amiable old man is. Do you want to try? Yi Luotian's move just now is to set an example to others. For him, losing a 9-star fighting emperor is nothing. The important thing is that he now has more combat power. As long as he can better grasp these people, he is not afraid that they dare not listen to him. From the current situation, his move just now has undoubtedly achieved great results. Damn it, Yi Luotian, you are cruel and cruel. You will come to no good end. Chen Zhen clenched his teeth and shouted reluctantly. It's just that you are too stupid to be the master of the world. The rules of this world are the law of the jungle. I just follow the rules and become a strong man. It's inevitable. As Yi Luotian spoke, the look on his face became more and more crazy and ferocious. And you are just chess pieces between the strong and not worth mentioning. At the moment when the voice fell, the 2 streamers suddenly burst into flames, which immediately pierced the eyebrows of the 2 people. At the same time, the fighting spirit just condensed in the 2 human bodies also dissipated in an instant. Playing self-explosion in front of me is really trying to die. A cold hum of disdain in his mouth, and then the leaves fell to the sky, and the light of his eyes turned, and he fell on the fighting spirit inheritance close at hand at the moment. A greedy smile was aroused in the corners of his mouth. At the same time, he made a sound again, and said in a cold tone, "All killed, none left." Suddenly, the dozen 9-star fighting emperors behind him moved again. At the same time, Yi Luotian also sent someone to seal the stone gate of the main hall. Therefore, none of the forces present escaped. At the moment, under the joint action of more than a dozen 9-star fighting emperors, only Yi Luotian's men and horses were left in the main hall in a moment. Put away the fighting spirit inheritance, Yi Luotian looked back, but his eyes fell on the corpses all over the ground. So many corpses, the remaining soul power, can also be a strong force. With a ferocious smile, Yi Luotian's big sleeve was caressed, and a strange suction immediately spread out. Then, in the main hall, all the residual soul power of the dead was collected by them. At the same time, Xiaoyang on the other side also came to the other hall. Many people have gathered here before the closed heavy stone gate. They are also very upset about the stone gate that can't be opened. They didn't expect that even if they came to the deepest part of the ancient tomb, they would need the 3 famous fighting skills of Qianjue to open the stone gate, but none of the people present had it, which led to that except a few people still stay here. Most of the strong people have left here to look for other ancient tombs. At the same time, I also hope to gather with Chen Zhen and others. However, their hopes are doomed to be broken. At this time, Xiaoyang in black came suddenly. In front of the stone gate, one eye immediately looked at the approaching figure in black robe. Then, a happy look appeared in the eyes of everyone. Xiaoyang, it's Xiaoyang coming. Now the stone gate can be opened. Hey, even if the stone gate is open, can you grab it? Xiaoyang can even solve it with one punch. The appearance of Xiaoyang not only surprised these people, but also attracted many fearful eyes. Among those people, Xiaoyang also saw Qin Yun and his gang at a glance. At the same time, somewhere in the crowd, the 2 people in black also noticed Xiaoyang's arrival. The corners of the mouth under the black robe showed a playful smile. The 2 eyes looked at each other secretly, but they didn't say anything. Seeing these strong men gathered here and the stone gate that has not yet been opened, Xiaoyang suddenly understood that it seems that Chen Array and Wu Jitian have not come here. In this way, no one has moved anything in the hall. This is undoubtedly good news for Xiaoyang. Before they came to the crowd, Qin Yun and others also noticed the arrival of the former. Suddenly, a dark color appeared in their eyes, but they also knew that it was not time to start with Xiaoyang. Therefore, They took back their eyes with hatred. Standing in the front of the crowd, Xiaoyang's footsteps stopped in front of the stone gate, but the crowd behind him gradually surrounded him. Xiaoyang can wait, but they can't wait to enter the stone gate. The remaining light from the corner of his eye swept over the people behind him. Immediately, Xiaoyang's steps moved and Tianju's step came out in an instant. With a current wind roaring past the stone gate opened slowly in a loud sound that sounded quite heavy. Whoosh! Then, a burst of wind-breaking sound of human shadow flickering sounded next to Xiaoyang's ears. Human shadows constantly rushed forward from Xiaoyang's body and head. It was dark. Such a scene looked like a locust plundering the ground. However, Xiaoyang didn't care about this. At the moment when the stone gate was opened, Xiaoyang's soul power poured into it and explored it quickly in the hall. Finally, Xiaoyang couldn't help frowning slightly. After some exploration, he still didn't find the so-called power of the origin of the soul. Can you say, does God Ju have no power to leave the source of the soul? But in that case, why did Tianying's words come true here? Xiaoyang's heart is full of unwilling. In this hall, except for the inheritance of fighting spirit, it is no different from the previous hall. He has not explored the breadth of the origin of the soul, nor the so-called formula of returning to the source. Is there really nothing here except the inheritance of fighting spirit? Damn it, where are those two things? Xiaoyang's heart was full of disappointment. Now it seems that there is only the last hall to try his luck. However, just when Xiaoyang was about to turn around, the remnant soul of Xiaoxian suddenly moved again. This time, the source-returning formula of the half-fragmented volume is also buzzing. When the gap reached this point, Xiaoyang's heart suddenly jumped. The body he was just about to turn suddenly stopped, his eyes raised, and his eyes full of flame instantly looked at the stone gate in front of him. To be exact, it was the hall behind the stone gate, which made countless strong people wait anxiously. His body moved. Xiaoyang didn't hesitate. He rushed directly into the hall in front of him and looked around with hot eyes. At the moment, there is chaos in the hall. All the strong people who come into the hall find that there is nothing in the hall except the fighting inheritance in the center. Isn't it obvious to tell them that only the strongest of these people can get the fighting inheritance? The screening process of the strongest is naturally the price of blood and life. The chaos in the field is far beyond Xiaoyang's expectation. At this time, people are constantly fighting with each other in order to get the fighting spirit inheritance. Their greedy desire makes them fight harder than usual. In order to achieve their goals, they do everything, but they will never be stingy with any means that can reduce stumbling blocks for themselves. Soon, there were many strong fighting emperors who died in the field. At this time, Xiaoyang looked around and spread his soul power, carefully exploring inch by inch in the hall. Soon, a slightly different scene from the previous hall appeared in Xiaoyang's eyes. Xiaoyang's eyes went straight through the crowd and saw the deepest part of the hall. There was also a huge stone chair that seemed to be carved. However, different from the previous stone chair, there was a vivid old man carved on this stone chair. The old man sat upright and put his hands on the armrests on both sides of the stone chair. Although they were stone carvings, his eyes seemed to be alive. With a sense of arrogance, he looked down at the people present. He looked like an adult watching a group of children playing. Is it? Xiaoyang's pupil shrinks slightly. He can feel a trace of vitality from his eyes. That is to say, the reason why the original force of the soul does not exist in the hall is not that it really does not exist, but that it is deliberately sealed in the stone statue. This person who seals up the source of the soul doesn't have to think about it. Nature is the greatest man in heaven. It's really unexpected that Heavenly Master Ju would seal the original power of the soul in the stone statues. When ordinary people break into the ancient tomb, they will basically run to the baby in the ancient tomb first. Why do you care about this? That's why you do this. Ignoring the people around him, Xiaoyang stared at the stone statue's eyes and muttered to himself. Suddenly, Xiaoyang was stunned. He seemed to feel that the stone statue's eyes were staring at him. In front of the stone gate, Xiaoyang waved his fist and blew out the oncoming man in front of him. He didn't look at it. He moved his body and flew straight towards the stone statue. In this chaotic crowd, even with Xiaoyang's body speed, he can't avoid all the figures or attacks. Therefore, in the face of those figures or fighting skills that always don't know where to shoot from, Xiaoyang can only wave his fist and break one of his fists. Bang bang bang! The dull collision sound, the constant noise, and the chaotic crowd made Xiaoyang's forward speed slow down. At the same time, it made him feel a little more irritable. Invisible, the power of starting is naturally fierce. The emaciated figure in black robes looks like a murderous god in the crowd at the moment. No matter how much attack and collision, he will be ruthlessly blasted out within a meter around him. Such a simple and violent act also makes some people in the field panic, even the strong 9-star fighting emperor. The muscles on his face also couldn't help twitching. What does this guy want to do? Somewhere in the crowd, Qin Yun's sight was also attracted by Xiaoyang's violent behavior. Immediately, he was shocked to see that the latter could erupt such terrible power. Then Qin Yun noticed that Xiaoyang's forward direction seemed to be the inheritance of fighting spirit. Do you want to compete for the inheritance of fighting spirit? You three, stop him. You can't let him go any further. Noticing this, Qin Yun immediately gave a violent drink and ordered the 3 Yang He who were guarding him. But little lord, what do you do? It's enough to have this guy by my side. Go and stop him. I must get the fighting spirit before him. Qin Yun's face firmly ordered the 3 people. Seeing this, they looked at each other and the black-robed man beside Qin Yun. Only then did they respond. They turned and looked at Xiaoyang together. When they moved, they rushed over. At this time, Xiaoyang made violent moves one after another, which made the strong people around him frightened of Xiaoyang. This time, Xiaoyang didn't have to do it himself. The strong people who saw themselves close to Xiaoyang quickly retreated. Even, some crafty guys deliberately forced their opponents to Xiaoyang's side, and those guys would rather be hurt by each other than touch Xiaoyang after discovering their opponent's intention. At this time, Xiaoyang was like a dangerous bomb in the crowd. Anyone who touched it must die and be hurt. Everyone was frightened by the latter. Finally, seeing that Xiaoyang was about to approach the fighting spirit inheritance, but everyone present didn't know it. At this time, the latter's attention was not on the fighting spirit inheritance. Even, Xiaoyang didn't have much interest in the so-called fighting spirit inheritance. Unfortunately, Xiaoyang doesn't think so, but it doesn't mean others won't think so. Shua shua. With the sound of 3 breaking rumors, 3 figures suddenly flashed out beside Xiaoyang, and 3 pairs of eyes fell on Xiaoyang in an instant. Heh! His eyes glanced at the 3 people beside him indifferently. Xiaoyang couldn't help frowning. He didn't want to compete for the inheritance of fighting spirit, but he didn't think they would pester him. Xiaoyang, you ran away from our brothers 6 months ago, but this time, you won't. Yang He waved his arm, and powerful fighting energy immediately gushed out of his body, with a frightening momentum. At the same time, the other 2 9-star fighting emperors also released their huge fighting energy, and quickly condensed into a solid fighting armor on their body surface to protect them. After seeing the powerful power shown by Xiaoyang just now, even if it is stronger than them, they have to be cautious about Xiaoyang. Otherwise, if they are not careful, they are likely to end up like their predecessors. Seeing the 3 people show such a posture, Xiaoyang's heart sank slightly. Did they find the difference of the stone statue? But then Xiaoyang gave up the idea, because until now, he found that it was the fighting spirit inheritance right in front of him. In this way, Qin Yun probably thought he wanted to compete for the fighting spirit inheritance, so he sent someone to obstruct him. However, all this is no longer important to Xiaoyang. After the incident 6 months ago, he and Qin Yun have been in a state of immortality. Now even if the latter sends someone to treat him, it is understandable. Moreover, even if Qin Yun doesn't come to find Xiaoyang's trouble today, Xiaoyang will also find him to settle accounts in the future. Without half hesitation, Xiaoyang bent his fingers and flicked, and the North King's body suddenly appeared nearby. His purple and golden body and overbearing fighting momentum made the people present feel cold as soon as the North King appeared. The master's strength is terrible. Even the puppet is terrible, just like a demon. Now, after a previous battle, The thunder power in Beiwang's body has been absorbed. Therefore, its strength has been successfully improved again, and it has reached the late stage of the 9-star fighting emperor. With the puppet, Beiwang's combat power is bound to be a leader among the strong at the same level. With such strength, it is easy to deal with 2 9-star fighting emperors at the same time. Therefore, Xiaoyang has to face only Yang He at the moment. Soon, the 2 9-star fighting emperors on one side had fought with the North King. Sure enough, just as Xiaoyang expected, the North King did not lose the wind with one enemy and two. Even with the help of the thunder power on his body, his combat power was strong enough to be equal to the 2 9-star fighting emperors. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyang was naturally relieved. Then he concentrated and focused on Yang He in front of him. At the moment, the latter obviously just regained his mind. The corners of his eyes twitched slightly and turned his head. His hate eyes immediately fell on Xiaoyang and scolded fiercely. Even if your puppet can block them both, I'm also a 9-star fighting emperor. I can't compare with the second-class goods like Jianming. I'm more than enough to deal with you alone. Oh, yes, I'm more than enough to deal with you. Xiaoyang smiled coldly, the palm under his sleeve robe turned gently, and 3 black steel needles appeared in his hand. Boast. Who is more than enough? Let's see the real chapter under our hands. A violent drink, followed by a shock to Yang his body, and a powerful fighting energy suddenly gushed out of his body. With a wave of his big sleeve, he turned into fighting skills and cut hard at Xiaoyang's head. The fierce fighting spirit came to Xiaoyang in the blink of an eye, but the latter was not afraid at all. Until those fighting spirit practices came to his eyes, he turned his head slightly and hid it easily. But then, Yang his body suddenly came forward and scratched hard against Xiaoyang's chest. The strong fighting spirit was that even the void was forcibly torn. However, the result was that he had not left any mark on Xiaoyang's body. What? Yang He was shocked. Of course, it was not his intention to release water, but the palm he had just clearly seen. When he was close to Xiaoyang's body, he was shocked to find that the latter's body, unconsciously, perfectly avoided his attack from a clever angle. How is this possible? Yang He was shocked. After all, the latter is just a 6-star fighting emperor, but how can speed and power be promoted to such a terrible situation at the same time? It is completely impossible. It's stupid to want to make a sneak attack under the shadow of the 4th-level soul power. Xiaoyang smiled coldly, and his body suddenly twisted. He directly hit Yang He with his half-body. Although Xiaoyang's blow was heavy, Yang He was a 9-star fighting emperor after all. He suffered from a blow, his body quickly retreated, and his fighting spirit surged in his body. He forcibly removed his great strength. However, Rao was so, his body still attracted a surge of qi and blood, and his face could not help turning white. Boy, you are so rude, but with this, you can't get fighting spirit. Yanhe Lung hissed. When his body moved, he rushed at Xiaoyang again. However, he was a little more defensive than before. His task was only to hold Xiaoyang down. As long as Qin Yun passed on the fighting spirit, they could turn around and retreat immediately. As for the account with Xiaoyang, they could only calculate it later. Hearing Yang his words, Xiaoyang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and looked at the fighting spirit inheritance. Sure enough, Qin Yun was quickly approaching the fighting spirit inheritance under the protection of the black-robed man. If no one stopped, I'm afraid the fighting spirit inheritance would soon fall into his hands. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyang uttered a cold hum at the bottom of his heart. He didn't want to compete for the inheritance of fighting spirit, but Qin Yun took the initiative to trouble him, which made Xiaoyang feel angry. Well, since you let me fight, I'll fight with you. Cold hissed, Xiaoyang suddenly turned his eyes and returned to Yang He in front of him. His eyes were indifferent, and his cold killing intention showed out without concealment, which made people cold at the bottom of his heart. Touching Xiaoyang's eyes, Yang his back was cold. Somehow, Xiaoyang in front of him was a trace of fear that made him feel. Drink. With a violent drink, Yang He moved first and wanted to strike first. But this time, Xiaoyang didn't intend to give him more opportunities. The right palm was lifted to his chest and thrown into the air. 3 black steel needles appeared in front of him. Then, Xiaoyang flexed his fingers and shot the 3 steel needles at Yang He in sequence. Seeing the 3 flying steel needles, Yang He dared not be careless. His body was slightly shaped, so he easily hid one of them. As for the remaining 2, Yang He also shot 2 fights and collided with them. However, just when Yang He thought he was done, he suddenly saw that the 2 fighting chi he shot were easily pierced by the 2 steel needles, and his prestige was shot at him. He saw that he had come in front of him and could not be avoided. Stop. With a low cry, Yang He stretched out his hands, quickly covered his palms with thick fighting spirit, and grabbed the 2 steel needles respectively. Hiss. But when Yang He's palm just grabbed the 2 steel needles in his hand, he was frightened to find that the 2 steel needles were as slippery as a loach. He couldn't grasp them at all. Damn it. While his face changed greatly, Yang He quickly controlled the fighting spirit in his body and continuously poured it into the fighting armor in front of his chest. Nail. With 2 crisp sounds, Yang He thought that the 2 steel needles had been resisted by the fighting armor. However, the next moment, his whole face was suddenly twisted, the whole human shape was convulsed, his eyes immediately became scarlet, and the vitality in his pupils dissipated rapidly. Before his death, Yang He looked down and saw 2 huge holes in his chest, covering his whole chest. Under the action of the void avenue, where the steel needle entered, the bones and internal organs were completely swallowed up, which was like suddenly dividing his body. Just think, how can a man live without his internal organs? The vitality dissipated, and Yang He's body fell uncontrollably, and then fell heavily among the bodies on the floor of the hall. He quickly killed Yang He. Xiaoyang didn't hesitate too much. With a move, the flying steel needle was quickly recovered. As for what was shot into Yang He's body, it dissipated by itself. I'm afraid it will take some time to condense again. However, this did not have a great impact on Xiaoyang at this time. Even if there were no 2, he still had 8 in his hand. He used 2 steel needles in exchange for the life of a 9-star fighting emperor. That is to say, without relying on his own means, with these 8 steel needles alone, he could kill 4 more 9-star fighting emperors. Such power is enough for him to challenge any power in this ancient tomb. Of course, Xiaoyang's mind at the moment is not about challenging forces, but the power of the original source of the human soul and the decision to return to the source. Maybe at the moment, he can add the same. Fighting spirit inheritance. As soon as his eyes turned, Xiaoyang looked at the place where the fighting spirit was passed on. Sure enough, Qin Yun had come near and wanted to include it in the ring. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyang's face was suddenly cold. Under such a distance, he couldn't stop it in an instant, so he could only whoosh. With a flick of his finger, the steel needle that fell into his hand immediately shot forward again, passed through the crowd in front and directly met Qin Yun. However, just when the steel needle came to Qin Yun, the man in black beside him suddenly shot the steel needle, flew it with a palm from the side, and stabbed it into the body of a strong man fighting the emperor not far away. Suddenly, there was a heart-rending roar in the hall. Xiaoyang's face sank and stared. The man in black robe also exposed his cold eyes through the cover of black robe and looked at him from a distance. At the same time, Qin Yun grabbed the fighting spirit in front of him, which was nearly the size of a washbasin. Shua. However, at the next moment, the change suddenly occurred. In the hall, before the fighting spirit inheritance, Qin Yun saw that the fighting spirit inheritance in front of him was about to be included in the ring, but then, at a certain place in the hall, a strong suction suddenly poured in, pulling the fighting spirit inheritance close at hand to Shengshi. The fighting spirit passed over the crowd. Under the hot eyes, it finally suspended in front of a man in black robe. Then, under the almost stunned eyes of the whole audience, it was included in the ring. At this moment, the whole audience was silent. The dull eyes all looked at the black-robed man who inherited the fighting spirit into the ring, especially Qin Yun at the moment. His face was even more stunned. I'm afraid no one can bear such a blow. On one side, the mysterious man in black robe also looked at the other side. A pair of cold eyes under the black robe stared at the man like a poisonous snake, showing all the killing opportunities in his eyes. On the other hand, Xiaoyang was stunned because of the sudden scene in the field. His sight followed the people. Only then did he find that another mysterious man in black appeared in his sight. With a sweep of his eyes, Xiaoyang immediately found that the other party actually had two people. Both of them were dressed in black robes and could not see clearly. At the same time, Xiaoyang was even more shocked that with his soul power, he could not see through each other's cultivation. In this way, there are two forces that can threaten him in the hall at the moment. This can't help but make Xiaoyang secretly alert. In the face of an opponent who can't predict his accomplishments, he really doesn't dare to be careless. When Xiaoyang observed the two black-robed people, the latter also seemed to be observing the change of Xiaoyang's look. Immediately, one of them, the corner of his mouth under the black robe, aroused a joking smile. "Who are you? How dare you rob me of my fighting spirit?" Qin Yun, who came back to God, was extremely angry. Relying on the protection of this person around him, he did not shy away from the evil thief who robbed him. But he didn't know that even the man guarding her at the moment was particularly afraid of the other two black-robed people, because he couldn't see the strength of these two people just like Xiaoyang. For Qin Yun's angry voice, the two black-robed people were indifferent, as if they had completely ignored him. "Bastard, Yang He, Yang Hua, Yang Lai, come together and bring back what belongs to me." Being ignored by the two, Qin Yun was even more angry. He subconsciously shouted out the names of the three and waited for the three to fight back. However, after a few breaths, he regained his consciousness. Yang He and his three men had gone to intercept Xiaoyang. How could they appear next to him at the moment? But soon, Yang Hua and Yang Lai, who were summoned by Qin Yun, hurried to Qin Yun's side. Their bodies were covered with wounds of different sizes, a trace of blood flowed continuously, and the blood in their bodies surged violently. However, the disappearance of Yang He made the two brothers feel deeply uneasy. Suddenly their eyes turned. Yang Lai and Yang He immediately found that Yang He, who should have been fighting with Xiaoyang, was missing at the moment. Wait for a time, two people's hearts suddenly sink, and Chi looks at Xiaoyang. "Xiaoyang, Yang He." The two brothers looked ferocious. Regardless of the surging breath in their bodies at the moment, their bodies shook and their fighting spirit immediately gushed out. "Dead." Lightly said two words, Xiaoyang didn't think it was necessary to hide anything from the two people. If he killed himself, he would kill himself. They couldn't do anything about themselves. "You want to die." When he heard the news he didn't want to hear, Yang Hua's fierce mood at the moment couldn't be suppressed. Regardless of Qin Yun's order, he shot at Xiaoyang. "You dare to kill Yang He? We want you to die." "Mi Huang means." The heart and hair gave a low cry, Xiaoyang's 10 fingers linked, and cumbersome knots were played quickly. However, in the twinkling of an eye, a huge energy finger was condensed over the head. At the same time, the North King who returned to his side also rushed towards Yang Hua, one of the two. At the moment, Yang Hua and Yang Lai, in order to avenge Yang He, also tried their best to fight together. Their prestige was particularly amazing. The strong fighting emperor along the way quickly stepped aside for fear of being affected by the next battle. Boom. Then, Xiaoyang and the North King met with both of them. With a startling roar, Xiaoyang and the North King settled down and retreated, and the famine finger dissipated. Yang Hua and Yang Lai opposite were also defeated by each other. This time, the two sides fought equally. "Xiaoyang, die. That's enough. I'll let you back now." Just when Yang Hua and his two people were angry and wanted to come forward again, Qin Yun's cheers came again. This time, anyone could hear the anger contained in his words. Hearing Qin Yun's cry, Yang Hua's body was fixed in place. They couldn't help shaking violently. Their eyes stared at Xiaoyang, but Xiaoyang ignored them, which made Yang Hua hate more deeply, but Qin Yun angrily scolded them again and again. Their mood was shaking from side to side until a long time later, they just lowered their heads with extreme reluctance and returned to Qin Yun with regret. Waste, dare to disobey my order. When this trip to the ancient tomb is over, you must look good. He glared at them fiercely. Then Qin Yun's eyes returned to the two figures in black robes not far away. The muscles in the corners of his eyes trembled. Just about to speak, the man in black robes who followed him stopped one of them, shook his head and whispered, "These two people are unusual. I advise you not to conflict with them now. Qin Yun's face jumped as soon as he said this. Being able to make this guy say this has proved the extraordinary of the two people in black robes. But fighting spirit inheritance. I'm too anxious to eat hot tofu. We'd better quit first. We can't get involved in the affairs here. It's best to wait and see what happens first. Xiaoyang also wants to inherit the fighting spirit. With his temperament, as long as he determines the goal, he will catch up with him. It's better for us to give him the mess and wait until they lose both sides. What's more, I haven't given you another good thing here, Jie. At the end of the speech, there was a strange smile under the black robe. Immediately, regardless of Qin Yun, they flew away from the main hall first. As for Yang Hua, they were stunned for a long time until Qin Yun and the man in black robe came to Shemen with anger. Looking at Qin Yun's back as he stepped out of the stone gate, Yang Hua and Yang Lai's face finally showed a very cold killing intention. If it weren't for the latter, how could Yang He die? For so many years, the three brothers have been working hard for him, but this guy has always called them at will. Even if they try their best to please him, they still ruthlessly ridicule him. Today, as soon as Yang He dies, they are finally disheartened with Qin Yun. At the same time, in the other two halls, Yi Luotian and Murong Xian, who have put away the fighting spirit inheritance, are also retreating towards the future. After the remaining four of Qin Yun and his party left the hall, Qin Yun quickly caught up with the man in black robe. He was very curious about what the latter said just now. From the words of the black-robed man, he can hear that this guy seems to have been ready for them, but he has always refused to take it out. At the moment, 2 9-star fighting emperors are missing from their team, which is a great loss for Qin Yun. I don't know whether what he said can make up for his loss. Under Qin Yun's inquiry, the black-robed man seemed to stop in some embarrassment, and Yang Hua quickly followed up behind him, but his face was a little low. Under Qin Yun's impatient gaze, the man in black stretched out a dry palm, and the ring between his fingers flashed slightly. Soon, a jade bottle appeared in the palm of his hand. Qin Yun's eyes are suspicious. Yang Hua and his followers are not interested in this matter at the moment. They just want to know how to kill Xiaoyang to avenge Yang He. What is this? Qin Yun frowned and asked curiously. This is a pill that can improve your cultivation. The black-robed man smiled strangely, and his words were somewhat proud. However, Qin Yun heard this in his ears, but it made the latter disdain and sneered, saying, "Huaji pill, I have taken it for a long time. Now you give it to me, but it won't have half the effect. Don't you even understand this truth? I said this was Huaji pill." A strange smile came out again under the black robe, the palm shook slightly, the jade bottle broke, and 6 round pills appeared in the palm of his hand. If Xiaoyang was here at this time, he would be able to recognize them immediately. These so-called pills are all the unique poison medicine made by Yi Luotian, dead leaf poison. Although the withered leaf insects do have the function of improving the cultivation of the strong fighting emperor, once swallowed, they will inevitably become Yi Luotian's puppets and shake their hands in life and death. Unfortunately, Qin Yun and others at the moment did not know anything about it. After several boasting by the people in black robes, Yang Hua and others were impatient to eat one first. Indeed, although their strength did not break through the powerful chemical source environment, they also reached the level of the later stage of the 9-star fight emperor. Such strength is undoubtedly much stronger than before. After a long time, Qin Yun tried to take one after seeing that the two were healthy, and his cultivation was also rapidly promoted to the middle of the 7-star duty, even to the later stage of the 7-star duty. Unfortunately, he can't take more of this pill, otherwise he will swallow the remaining 3 without hesitation. Seeing the 3 people subdue the dead leaf Gu, the man in black robe smiled in his heart. Immediately, he took the 3 people to the road when they came. "Come on, there's still a good play waiting for us, Jie." At the same time, in the Great Hall, with the gradual loss and retreat of the people, there were only less than 20 people left in the huge hall. Xiaoyang and the 2 people in black robes were also listed, and behind them were the stone statues facing the Supreme Master on that day. The 2 black-robed men stood side by side, looking at Xiaoyang through the black robe, saying nothing, with a joking smile on their face. As for Xiaoyang, Seeing that there are fewer and fewer people in the hall, Xiaoyang is full of hesitation. These two people have been handed down, but why don't they want to leave? They said they were afraid of themselves. Xiaoyang didn't believe it, but he couldn't even find out the cultivation accomplishments of each other. It can be seen that they either had some hidden treasure or had absolute strength. In contrast, Xiaoyang believed the latter more. Since the other party won't be afraid of him, but he stays here again, Xiaoyang thinks about it and can only get a conclusion. They also found something strange about the stone statue. With this in mind, Xiaoyang's heart suddenly sank slightly. If so, I'm afraid he must fight with them anyway. Xiao Xian's resurrection is very important in Xiaoyang's heart. No matter what price he pays, he can't wait any longer this time. But in the end, after Xiaoyang had been meditating in his heart for a long time, his heart was horizontal and he wanted to take a chance. I hope the two people didn't find the strange shape of the stone statue. As soon as he turned around, Xiaoyang wanted to leave the hall. When he turned around, he found that unconsciously, there were only 3 of them left in the hall. However, just as Xiaoyang was about to leave, one of the 2 people behind him who looked a little shorter took 2 steps forward. At the same time, the old joking voice came out. "Mr. Xiaoyang, I haven't seen you for many years. How are you recently?" At the moment when the word